Good morning to our viewers here in Nigeria and across the world. Welcome to Breakfast Central on this Thursday morning. We have, of course, the next 2 hours to share with you the major conversations happening here in Nigeria. And we, as always, encourage you to be a part of these conversations by simply following us on all social media platforms at News Central TV and share your views with us. If you're watching us on YouTube, do well to as well leave a comment in the comment section. This morning, before we get into our news headlines and also share with you what the top stories are, some of the things that have created some conversations across Nigeria. First of all, the news reports of Nigeria's inflation rate climbing to 34.80% in December, of course, up from 33.60% in November. The National Bureau of Statistics did put out, that report in the last 24 hours. And, it has created conversations across Nigeria, because once again, it creates doubts with regards the Nigerian government's projections of 15% inflation, with the 2025 budget. Many people who saw that had already, shared their doubts and pointed out that it wasn't, necessarily realistic to talk about a 15% inflation in 2025 from Mr. President. And so seeing that inflation still climbs to 34.80%, even with those who say that Nigeria's inflation, it seems way more than 34 or 35% or 34%, has once again brought back those fears as to what exactly the plans are by the current administration and what are what hope is there really of ever achieving 15% inflation like the federal government has said. And so we will be x-raying a little bit of that conversation this morning. But once again, for the 1,000th time, like I've always mentioned, the case surrounding, we started this week talking about Mudashiru Obasa, the now former Speaker of the Lagos State House of Assembly, and, his impeachment as Speaker. He returns to now being a member of the House representing Agege once again. But the numerous reasons for which he was impeached, they were talking about disrespect, and abuse of power, abuse of office, and many other things. But one thing that was mentioned was the allegations of fraud. And I have repeatedly said, in the last 24 hours, that Nigerians are still not certain exactly what the fraud allegations are. There's many things that have been mentioned. There's a 43.5 billion, naira. There's a 17 billion naira. There's many figures and many things that have been mentioned, but there's no actual certainty if it was an allegation, a fraud allegation, if it was mismanagement of funds, if it was, maybe stealing. These figures have really just been bandied here and there without necessarily having any certainty. Like, Nigerians do not know exactly what the fraud allegations are. And it's another opportunity for me to once again say that whenever we hear about these figures, when we hear about billions of naira allegedly either mismanaged or stolen or, misappropriated, whichever term that you want to use, it's another opportunity to remind everyone that nobody does these things as an individual. Nobody takes 40 billion naira by themselves. If 10 billion naira is taken from state coffers or from the House of Assembly coffers, or whichever one it is, it's never done by just one individual. It is very likely, 99% of the time, done in collaboration with other people. And so if these allegations are real, until we get some clarity on what exactly the allegations are with, Mudashiru Obasa, if these allegations are real, it is a good time to remind you that he very likely, let's just say him now, but anybody who takes 20 billion naira, who mismanages 20 billion naira in any part of Nigeria, doesn't do it solo. It is done in collaboration with either people who turned their faces the other way while it was being done, or people who co-signed on those payments, or people who, all put hands together and shared whatever funds that we're talking about here. And so when we have conversations on monies being stolen by a government official at any level, it should be a reminder to everyone that not just one person should be fingered when we're having those conversations. Not just one person should be mentioned. It is definitely 99% of the time more than one person's doing. And again, it's not just the person who allegedly misappropriated those funds. It is also the people who turned the other way, knowing that those funds were being misappropriated, that they were, being transferred to accounts that they shouldn't be transferred to. In any situation that you hear about, the same thing with Kogi State Governor's case. When we hear about 100 billion naira being mismanaged or being, allegations, placed against the former Kogi State Governor Yahaya Bello. He did not withdraw 100 billion naira from Kogi State and send it to another account by himself or mismanage those funds by himself. There's many other, persons in that system that turn their faces the other way, and those people should also be put, in the conversation. We should be asking the Minister for the Commissioner for Finance. We should be asking the Auditor General of the state. We should be asking the heads of the State House of Assembly. Every single person whose authority that money should have been is either co-signed or turned their faces the other way, knowing that those funds were being mismanaged, should also be fired. It is also gross incompetence on their part. It is also mismanagement on their part, knowing that those funds were being mismanaged, not just one person. And for me, it's one of the ways with which we should start to clean up the system if we are truly serious about fighting corruption in Nigeria. Whoever's name that you call or you mention, unfortunately, Nigerians have always complained that when it comes to top government officials, the people who actually have power, a lot of times the EFCC is not strong enough to actually see the end of those cases. And if the EFCC is certain of the allegations that it is accusing these persons of, it's the chances are very, very slim that any of these persons would ever see jail and be sent to prison. And so while we battle to improve the strength of the institutions that should jail these people for corruption, we should also remind ourselves that it's never a one-man show. It is a combination of different people and different factors that led to it being possible to mismanage 30 billion naira, 5 billion naira, 500 million naira, whichever one it is. It should be a part of the conversation that we have when we talk about mismanagement of funds or allegations of fraud across Nigeria. All right, and now let's share with you what our top stories are this morning and also bring you breakfast headlines. This morning, Nigeria's inflation hits 34.80%, up from the 33% it was in December 2024. And this is from an NBS report, the National Bureau of Statistics. Also this morning, assessing federal government's cash transfer agenda as the government plans to send 75,000 naira to 70 million Nigerians. Armed Forces Remembrance Day 2025, the Vice President, ministers, and others honor fallen heroes. Also, budget defense. The Justice Ministry recovers $110 million in stolen assets. We'll also be bringing you the newspaper front pages this morning, sharing with you the major stories making headlines across Nigeria this Thursday morning. Welcome to Breakfast Central. And now on breakfast headlines. Nigeria's inflation rate climbed to 34.80% in December, up from 33.60% in November 2024, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. Transportation costs drove the increase, while food inflation eased slightly to 39.8% from 39.9%. Core inflation, excluding food and energy, rose to 29.3%. The NBS is revising its methodology, rebasing the Consumer Price Index for the first time in 16 years, with 2024 as the new reference year. The food category's weighting will reduce from 51.8% to 40.1%, potentially lowering reported inflation. And also, Nigeria's Minister of Defense has expressed worry over the non-provision of accommodation and other welfare benefits for serving personnel. The minister, during the defense of the ministry's budget at the House of Representatives, says that the inadequate provision of welfare for personnel can negatively impact their performance, calling for improvements in the 2025 budget defense. The Chief of Defense Staff, while also reeling out the military's achievement in the last year, says that much has been achieved in the fight against insurgency and terrorism. And the Nigerian Air Force has confirmed that the misplaced hits by its fighter jets belonging to the air component of Operation Fanson Yama impacted Tungakara communities, killing several innocent civilians. This was the report of an on-the-spot assessment which shows that the point of impact of the strike exceeded its planned and targeted area. The team, led by the former Director of Public Relations and Information of the Air Force, Air Vice Marshal Edward Gapwet, says the Air Force regrets the unfortunate incident.
Dangibi village in Zurmi local government area of Zamfara State. We've met the village chief, who has been very, very gracious enough to take us around to the scene of the accident. And from what we've observed, clearly there were points of impact where obviously whatever type of ammunition that was used impacted the ground based on the size of the crater we saw on the ground, and some of the sharpness we've also been able to recover showed that indeed the impacts on some of the destroyed buildings we saw, some of the branches of trees that were also shown to us. We intend to go back with some of those evidences. Definitely they will undergo forensic examination, and it will help us to come up with a very, very something much more useful that the Chief of Air Staff will use.
Still in the news, the Deputy Governor of Ogun State, Naimot Salako Oyedele, narrowly escaped an attack on Wednesday during a protest by students in Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital. The incident occurred while the Deputy Governor's convoy was en route to the 35 Artillery Brigade, Alamala, Abeokuta, to represent Governor Dakwa Abiodun at the 2025 Armed Forces Remembrance Day celebration. It was gathered that some aggrieved students of Moshood Abiola Polytechnic, Abeokuta, were seen on the streets following the dissolution of the union government by the management. Still in the news, gunshots disrupted the Edo State Governorship Election Petitions Tribunal, which began hearing on Wednesday in Benin City, the state capital. Hoodlums were also reportedly seen outside the heavily charged venue of the tribunal, where gunshots rent the air, causing people to scamper for safety. The tribunal had commenced hearing on the petitions challenging the September 21st, 2024 Edo governorship election, where Monday Okwewolo of the All Progressive Congress was declared as the winner. The main challenger at the tribunal is Asuego Dalu of the People's Democratic Party. Now, outside Nigeria, the situation at the Steelfontein mine has escalated into a tense confrontation between the affected families and government officials. As families mourn their lost loved ones and await answers, community members have expressed their outrage, holding the government accountable for the tragedy. In a surprising turn of events, ministers seeking to address the grieving community were met with hostility and were chased away when they tried to share their perspective on the incident. The government has rejected claims of responsibility, insisting that they cannot be held accountable for the events that led to the miners' tragic deaths. And in Mozambique, the country's new president, Daniel Chapo, has vowed to unite the country as he took the oath of office on Wednesday. This comes as 7 more protesters were killed in fresh political unrest. Chapo, who was previously a little-known provincial governor, extends his Frelimo party's 50-year rule of the gas-rich African nation after October's contested election. Supporters of opposition candidate Venancio Mondlane, who insist he won the vote, have protested for months, sometimes drawing a violent police response.
Welcome back to Breakfast Central. Calls for improved welfare top the list of demands from military veterans and widows of slain servicemen who have paid the ultimate price with their lives. This was during the Armed Forces Celebration and Remembrance Day ceremony in Abuja, where Vice President Kashim Shettima led cabinet ministers to pay their respects to the nation's heroes. Amadine Uyi brings us more in this report.
Nigeria's 2025 Armed Forces Celebration and Remembrance Day. In attendance were dignitaries and members of the diplomatic corps. After the arrival of the Vice President, who was representing President Bola Tinubu, the laying of wreaths for the fallen heroes commenced. Then the gun salute to honor their sacrifices. Vice President Kashim Shettima led dignitaries to the release of white pigeons, symbolizing peace and unity for the nation. Some of those who had served the nation expressed their delight at the event.
The feeling is a feeling of joy, at the same time a feeling of great loss to our members who have fallen, who have made the supreme sacrifice. So this day, it is dedicated entirely for celebration and also remembrance of all the fallen heroes, and also those of us who serve and are living in good health, and those who are serving in the field.
Very happy, very, very happy that they honor and remember our loved one, their selflessness sacrifice to Nigeria and to their family. We are happy that they remember both these retired ones and the ones that are still serving. We say thank you to the federal government and thank you to Nigeria.
However, others urge the federal government to focus on the welfare of these past heroes.
We want the government to help us increase our military pension that will commensurate with the current realities, because we cannot cope. Our children go to school, some of us pay rent and others.
I think educational help, though we have this normal military scholarship sponsorship, which for 4 children. So our mother, who is the poor president, should please plead for those who have more than 4 children, so that those one can be catered for as well.
I advocate and I call every time I have opportunity that government should continue to improve on the general welfare of both the serving and the retired.
With the event ended, many will be hoping that the sacrifices of these past heroes will continue to act as a beacon and a guide for a united and more prosperous nation. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadine Uyi.
Again, we will always say that the sacrifices of these heroes, past and present, will never be forgotten and should always be applauded. And as much as we can, we'll continually hold our government to account to honor the lives and the sacrifices of these people. Now let's move away to our next conversation. During the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty on October 17, 2023, President Bola Tinubu's administration said eligible households are slated to receive 75,000 naira within a 3-month time frame as part of the program, which was formally unveiled. In another twist, during the 30th Nigeria Economic Summit in Abuja, the federal government revealed that a social investment program is targeted to impact 60% of the poorest, reaching 20 million persons via cash transfer.
Now, the statement was made by the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Adun. And there have been too many social intervention programs, such as the National Social Investment Program, NSIP, the Social Security Program, NPOWER, and Conditional Arm Transfer, just to mention a few. Despite these interventions, Nigeria's poverty and inflation index continue to rise, leaving every concerned citizen worried and asking why the federal government is spending so much on what they term as ineffective poverty alleviation schemes. To analyze and assess this, we're joined by investment banker and public affairs analyst Emeka Obiari. Good morning, and thanks for joining us, sir. Good morning, Mr. Obiari. Can you hear us?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Great to have you in the program. I want your views, first of all, on the views that many people have that this is seemingly just a waste of money. These are ineffective poverty alleviation steps, that they do not work, and so why is the Nigerian government repeatedly wasting money? But also, if you would put into comparison that in other countries, there are people that receive unemployment benefits, and in Canada and the United States and the UK, I believe. So can the Nigerian government argue that's pretty much the same thing, that as the governments in those other countries give money to the poorest of the poor and those who are unemployed and whatnot, the Nigerian government also has, pretty much the same idea of sharing 75,000 naira to 70 million people, or 10,000 naira to 20 million people, or whatnot?
Osareke, I've always maintained, and if you go through the internet, you see most of my published works in national dailies and even my interviews. Conditional cash transfer has never worked anywhere in the whole world, and will never work. In fact, it has never worked in Nigeria. Actually served as a conduit of looting and stealing by public sector officials. You mentioned something about social welfare schemes that happen in places like the US and other developed economies. Under the social welfare scheme in the US, people are identified using their social security ID. There is nobody who comes under that scheme that you don't know his SSID, you don't know his tax identification number. The whole essence of that intervention is temporarily for those who may have lost their job or who may have lost their means of livelihood. And it's a temporary measure. And of course, you see how much is spent, who it was spent on. The records are so clear. And that is why it was easy for fraudsters to identify those guys and started fleecing them. In Nigeria, we don't know those who actually received this. When they started this program in 2015, we only had about 76 million extreme poor people. Today, we have 197 million Nigerians who are under poverty. And for emphasis sake, the number speaks. According to the World Bank indicator, anybody who earns less than $64.50 in a month, net income, is regarded as poor. And if you are to exchange it based on the current autonomous official exchange rate, it's actually 110,000. And if you look at that NDIC record, that showed clearly that out of the over 16 million accounts in deposit money, but only 0.6% has up to 500,000 that are deposited inside it. That is the level of poverty in Nigeria. And we've seen it over and over again. The other time, under the hush money, under Buhari, when they were doing the same number of intervention, they told us how they showed us how they spend almost about 7 billion naira to train telephone repairers. Today, we don't know who the telephone repairers are. We don't know where their shops are. They have no identity. And that is the worst thing that can happen to this country. If this federal government of Nigeria and other governments, even at the state level, want to eradicate poverty, we know what to do. Firstly, you have to ensure price and exchange stability. And to ensure price and exchange stability, we've advocated many times what they should do to ensure that that happened. To create employment in Nigeria and entrepreneurship, the first thing they should do is to tackle insecurity. The lowest hanging fruit that employs most Nigerians are the agro and agro value chain. Today, people can no longer. Nigeria is at its most unsafest state, if there's anything like that, in the history of this country. I was reading the other day about a banker that was a woman, a banker, December 13, that was kidnapped, ransom paid to her, and she was murdered. And it's in the southeast of Nigeria where I come from. We've shown them clearly what they can do. In the next 6 months, insecurity will be a thing of the past. In fact, if the governments at all levels in Nigeria, state and federal, are serious, the only agenda they should pursue is the agenda to create safe and secure environment in Nigeria. Just one simple agenda in 2025. And the second agenda should be just to create infrastructure that will support the security. for Nigerians to go to work. If you look at all the development plans we've had, I took out time to look at the Global Infrastructure Development Master Plan that was developed. I showed that we must attract capital investment of $100 billion annually over the next 30 years, $3 trillion, to be able to move our economy from that of the fourth world to second world economy. I looked at the Economic Recovery Growth Plan 2017-2020. They didn't even not achieve up to 1%. And I even looked at the current one that is expiring this year, the National Development Plan 2021-2025, where they even said they were going to invest total of they are going to attract of $833 billion in the economy. They even projected that in 2025 we will have a budget of surplus. Today, look at budget proposal, deficit of 13 trillion, debt services of 15 trillion. You don't build an economy that you want to eradicate poverty through this kind of means. They know the truth, and we'll keep on telling them the truth.
Mr. Anemeka, what is the possibility? You've talked about providing measures that can help the government and the country fight insecurity and make it a thing of the past in 6 months. We've been fighting this for about 15 years. What is the guarantee that there's a foolproof plan? And we're looking at what can be done in the short term. We're looking at something that can be done immediately, because the relief that Nigerians are seeking, yes, we want something long term, but in the meantime, there's something short term that needs to be done. We'll talk about what the short term options are, but first of all, let's talk about the insecurity that you've highlighted.
Okay, Oli, I was privileged to stay in Kigali for 15 days, from December 22nd to January. Rwanda is 26,000 square kilometers. Rwanda is less than the landmass of the southeast of Nigeria. Rwanda's GDP, $14 billion, is even lower than the GDP of Imo State. The GDP of the whole 5 southeast states is $60 billion. For 15 days, I did not see any pothole. For 15 days, even as much as 11 o'clock in the night, I carry my phone, I stroll. You will see policemen along the road with their gun. You see patrol vehicle, nobody stops you, nobody harasses you. I did not record any one single incident. The southeast is 28,000 square kilometers, even smaller than Oyo State, smaller than Benue State. 95 local government areas, 1246 electoral wards. I'm trying to come back home, domesticate it. And we know that to secure the southeast of Nigeria in 3 months is the easiest thing anybody can do. A security trust fund of 120 billion. In the north, we have the civilian task force that carries AK-47 and drones and work with the military to secure, and yet this security is there. In the southeast, we don't even need police checkpoints, we don't even need military checkpoints, but those checkpoints are not even providing security, only extortion points for criminality. All the governors, the 5 governors, meet with Nuhu Ribadu and the president. We want to equip our people, vigilante. Let the communities control it. When I mean control it, it's not as if they're going to set up armed groups. It's going to be under the supervision of National Security Advisor and the governors under the Southeast Governors Forum. 120 billion naira security trust fund transparently executed. People will raise that money in 24 hours. In every electoral ward, 200 youths, train them, pay them well, 150,000 naira a month. Provide them with AK-47, Kenkoso dogs, innocent. Give us armored personnel carriers, 3 in every local government. Let me tell you, create 100, 500 to 1,000 hectares of agro-industrial parks. Local government chairmen, just provide infrastructure for them. The private sector group will activate investments. There is no electoral ward in the southeast that cannot create up to 5 to 10 billion naira revenue annually. And we know we don't even have the landmass. If you reclaim 1,000 hectares from every ward, there will be no forest for kidnappers even to stay. Let me tell you, if you go to the southeast today, there is so much going on there. Organ harvesting, ritualists, kidnappers. It has become a free-for-all thing. And I tell you this, when you lawful terror, the task on lawful terror, when you hand over security back to the people, the community knows the good, the bad, and the ugly. And these also young men also have that filial connection to protect their mothers, protect their fathers, and chase away the bad hoodlums. So does this
does this also highlight the conversation about state policing and community policing?
I don't support community policing in terms of handing it over to the governors. I'm giving you the structure that will protect it from manipulations of the governors, who are even worse than those at the central level. Basically, if you do this, it's going to have a tripartite command system. National Security Advisor, the governor, and the coordinator, who will be a retired not lower than the rank of a brigadier general or the director of DSS or a DIG. And I tell you, we've seen it work. Peter, when he was governor of Anambra State in 2006, even did a very caricature version of it, and it worked. What did he do? 177 Autonomous Community, give me your children. He went to Innocent, provide trucks for every community. He went to Yadua, train them, give me army to clear the forest. They didn't even have AK-47, pump action. Every community gated their communities, and they had communication. In 6 months, even the notorious kidnapper ran away from Anambra and went to First Park, Lagos. For 5 good years, Anambra was voted by the IGP as the safest state. And what Peter did was even a caricature version of what we are trying to propose to them to do. And the funding is not going to come from their FAC, nor from their jack. It is heartbreaking that a place that is as small than Benue State, a region, a place that is so communally interlinked, a place that everybody knows who is who. Let me tell you, they're not like unknown gunmen in the south. They know the gunmen. They know where they are. The same thing in Zamfara State. The governor of Zamfara State says they know where the bandits live. They know who they are. If there is a political way to empower the people, in 2 weeks, there will be history. And the one thing that is that we don't have the political will from the federal. Let me say, as governor, I don't need even Abuja to secure my state. I will not share an inch of my state with any criminal or hoodlum. I earn enough FAC and jack. I can mobilize my people. The problem we have here is leadership lacuna at the state level. Because if you have the legitimacy of your people, you have the trust of your people as governor, and you sincerely have compassion and empathy for your people, I don't think there's any inch of your state. Imo State is 5,553 square kilometers, 305 electoral ward. If you hand over Imo State to me in 6 months, if you see any security anywhere in any inch of Imo State, I will resign.
All right.
And we know these things, and nobody's talking about it. Everybody is scared to talk about it. And because these governors and the elites can afford to hire police, and even today, those that hire police are not secured. You know how many times these hoodlums have attacked military patrols? How many times they've beheaded security agents? And people call them all of them. But these guys are known. They are known by their people. They know why where they hide. But the only thing that is scaring them away because they have AK-47.
All right. Let's now, I mean, you've highlighted certain measures that can probably be used to combat insecurity, and we'll see how that goes. But let's highlight what the short-term measures can be done in terms of, so if now we're seeing that the president's, the federal government is resolute to go ahead with these cash transfers, is there any way that we can make the best of the situation from your standpoint?
If they want to do the cash transfer, I don't need to give any cash to anybody. I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. To do an agro-industrial park of 500 to 1,000 hectares would take $6 million. It will create 5,000 jobs. What do? I've done these numbers. In Italy, it has been done under what they call the Copado model. In the Southeast, we can bring in the Igbo apprenticeship scheme. What it simply means is, what is the lowest hanging fruit? I'll give you an example. We have 1,346 electoral wards in the Southeast. If we decide in every ward we are creating, as the communities, you're not taking their land. The lands are communally owned because it's scarce. Donate 100, donate 200. Just do infrastructure, borehole and security. Facilitate it 1 hectares. Just give them the terra species of the palm tree, the one that does about 30 tons per hectare. They intercrop it with some of the food crops that can even be grown in 3 months, like rice, in yam that can be done in 270 days. If you want to pay them the cash transfer, you're only paying them stipend. Upon harvest, you will recover the money from them. At least the stipend you're giving them will help them to keep them alive while they till the ground under mechanized and tech-driven arrangement with trained agronomists supervising them. To create an avenue where you can buy up everything, just like we had in the early 60s, commodity boards, so that you can even help to regulate price, not militarily, but using supply to suppress demand. When you do this, we've got the numbers we live. 2,500 clusters. It will take us $15 billion to do. But
Yeah,
it will generate $109 billion annually.
You're describing
21 million jobs in such a way that the least person in that cluster makes almost about 2 million naira annually. Nobody who earns 2 million naira annually in the village is poor.
Yeah, you're describing an agricultural investment system or a program. But the argument might be that not everybody in the community necessarily.
No, across board for artisans. See, I just use an example. My team, we have developed sector by sector programs like this, intervention programs. If you tell us, it has worked everywhere. I am a development economist, and my doctorate is on effectiveness of microfinance as a tool for sustainable poverty reduction. I've done a lot of literature review. I've looked at other clients. The truth is that you don't just dash people money without control. You can provide those interventions under a very productive arrangement. If you do cash transfer for consumption, after all, it wouldn't even eliminate poverty. A bag of rice today is 90,000 naira, 100,000 naira. Even bigger than minimum wage. If we sector by sector, if these guys are sincere, we are willing to provide them everything they need pro bono. This country will work. We've shared 2.3 trillion naira to 5 development commissions. Those monies will enter into private pockets. NDDC has taken over 16 trillion naira over the last 18 years. What is the impact? They only ended up creating billionaires among the elites, while the poor become poorer.
Yeah. This has been, a repeated, action, by the Nigerian government, not just with this, current administration. The Buhari administration did it as well, which is, this repeated distribution of hundreds of billions or trillions of naira to the poor people, the poor man as well, who's going to receive this money. He might disagree with you entirely and say, even if it is 50,000, bring it, let me start from there. At least that would take care of me and my family for a few weeks. And we're talking about the really, really poor people. Your argument now is that the government doesn't even have the statistics to identify these poor people across Nigeria. Is that a point that you're also making?
Yes, there's no data. Let me see. If we have data, where the monies are going to and who are receiving it, first of all, it will shield the scheme from corruption. And it's easy to get this. There is BVN. Even MTN has Momo. There is payment gateway for these things to be tracked. What is big deal? It will even help drive financial inclusion. You have a website, dedicated website. We've paid 70 billion. These are the names of people that got 70 billion. These are their BVN. These are their tax ID. And this is how much they got. But they won't do it, because if they make it transparent the way it is supposed to be done, or the way it's done everywhere, it will eliminate corruption. And I will tell you this, most of these ideas are being pushed by those within the political hierarchy, within the civil service bureaucracy, because they just want to. I was sharing with somebody that said, if you look at the budget, why the budgets in Nigeria are not working, because 60% of whatever we got as expenditures are actually privately stolen by the political class and the civil service bureaucracy. And that is how painful it is. See, we can do those cash transfers, but under a very productive layered arrangement. I can give you, we've developed templates on this, and we are willing to give it to them, sector by sector. Is it the bricklayers? Is it vulcanizers? Is it mechanics? How you can actually dispense cash to the poor in such a very productive layered arrangement that they will come back after 1 year again becoming poorer. Okay, how come in 2015 we started conditional cash transfer under Buhari? We were 76 million poor Nigerians. Today, you 197 million. If you doubt me, do a census of Nigerians. Just open a platform and ask Nigerians to come and tell you their income. The poverty level in Nigeria is so glaring. It is shocking. It is scary.
All right. I guess unfortunately, this is a reality. We're facing really terrible times. Inflation isn't smiling. And there are many who are looking up, to this conditional cash transfer and hoping that, this might be the dawn for them. You don't seem to have any faith in it, but I think the next few weeks will determine where we are going with this. Dr. Nnaemeka Obiari, thank you so much for your time with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll go on a break, and when we come back, we have another conversation. We're looking at the inflation rate and what the news is saying from the NBS. Stay with us.
Nigeria's inflation rate has risen to 34.80% in December, marking a 0.20% increase from November's 34.60%. This surge is largely attributed to the festive period in December, which saw a significant demand for goods and services.
The food inflation rate also saw a notable increase, rising from 39.84% in December. And this, of course, is 5.91% points higher than the rate recorded in December 2023. The National Bureau of Statistics reports that items like yam, beer, rice contributed to this increase, ultimately affecting the purchasing power of Nigerians. Joining us to unpack this further as we explore the implications of this trend on Nigeria's economy and citizens, we have this morning our guest in the studio.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Segun Shopiton. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Good to have you.
Good to see you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I started the program this morning by asking or pointing out, that 34.80% December 2024, as the NBS reported, in a year where the government has its projections for inflation to be 15%, in the 2025 budget details. So, I mean, isn't this a clear sign that the Nigerian government, really wasn't serious when it was writing 15% in 2025 budget?
Well, I mean, I think they knew what they were doing. They are very serious. They're so serious that we need to take them very seriously. Because if we don't, then we might find ourselves in very murky waters in the coming months, in the coming years, really. And the reason I say this is, when I say they're serious, I'm not saying they're serious about the plans and the things that they can do to bring this inflation down, to rein it in, but they're serious about that number. You will recall, and this might appear unrelated, but it is very related, the recent reports that we're going to be rebasing our economy and rebasing our basis for inflation calculation.
Yeah.
And the information that came out is that we are now looking at 2024 as the base year for inflation. Now, if you do that, inflation numbers, the numbers for inflation will crash. You might be talking maybe 5%, maybe 10, So, in other words, at some point during this year, I think the rebasing is supposed to happen early this year. Whenever that happens, inflation numbers are just going to miraculously drop to maybe 5 or 10%. And then the government will turn around, look at us in Nigeria and say, we've done it.
But if the numbers then drop, does that reflect in the purchasing power of Nigerian citizens?
So what we are all now saying, and I want to encourage everybody that has a voice and a platform to warn against this very, I think I'll just use the word dangerous tendency that we're beginning to see from the NBS, that you do not play with data, especially national data, because if you do that, then the basis for policy formulation is completely skewed and will be in serious trouble. So having said that, the government saying inflation will go down to 15% when we can't see clear policy action and direction is funny.
Yeah.
All right.
The basic things that we need to do, addressing exchange rates, addressing the supply side of the issue, addressing the money supply side of the issue as well. So you've got production, you've got supply.
All right, we'll come back to talk about what the basic things to be done are. Let's go on a very quick break, and we'll come back with the conversation shortly. Welcome back. We're looking at the inflation numbers and the reports by the NBS and what this means. And before we went on the break, Mr. Shokwiton, you were speaking to us about what the NBS, the plans, especially to rebase the economy based off, starting from 2020, and what this will mean for the average Nigerian.
Okay, so for the GDP, they've chosen a base year of 2019, which is 5 years, and that's perfect. That's actually what's supposed to happen. So I don't understand why we can't just do the same for inflation. If you want to rebase your inflation, there are two things that you need to do with inflation. You need to expand the basket, the CPI basket, the components of the basket. So now I think we have about 750 items in that basket. They say they want to expand that to about 950 or 970, which is good, because that will then give us a more balanced picture. But then the base year cannot come. The closer you are with your base year, the more unrealistic your inflation numbers outcome will be in terms of measuring the actual rate of increase in prices. You have to look at over what period. So if I'm looking at increase in prices over the last 2 months, it's going to look as if, the month on month is only 2%. Yes. sorry, is 0.2% month on month. Nothing has changed. And that's what we are trying to, so they must not do this. I hope they won't. I hope we have find a way to stop them. Sadly, with the way things tend to happen in Nigeria, I think, it will happen. And then we'll just have to figure out how to get real numbers. So it's taking us back about 15 years before the time of Dr. Yemi Kale. During that period, the MBS became data, all of a sudden was no longer a problem. For those of us that are in the policy analysis space, it was just comforting to just go to the MBS website and you will see data, any type of data.
So is it safe to say that, at this point, is the credibility of the NBS at stake?
It's seriously under threat, and that's very, very dangerous for a country, where all of the key economic indicators that both the policymakers and investors in particular require to make decisions. All of a sudden, investors begin to look at your numbers suspiciously, then they will take a very, very careful look at whether they want to be here or not, because they know the truth. Every investor knows that unemployment in Nigeria is not 5%. It's still trending at somewhere around 30+%, and yet your data, or official data organization is saying it's 5%. We're lying to ourselves. So if we lie about unemployment, we lie about inflation, what else are we lying about? So, it's crucial. But having said that, I think that we need to get government to begin to look at the things that they can do to actually bring these numbers down. I was listening to one of my senior colleagues, a professor at the Lagos Business School, who lectured me, and he was saying, we can get inflation down to 10% before the end of this year.
How?
All you have to do, all you have to do is take some bold, the CBN in particular needs to make some bold decisions with regards to exchange rate management. That's one. Then on the production side, a few things to ramp up production very quickly. Dealing with the issue of electricity, for example, it's not rocket science. These things can happen. So if you fix the production side, the availability of the goods that the money is chasing, and then you fix the money supply side and the exchange rate side, those three metrics can come together very quickly. And even if you don't get to 10%, you absolutely, definitely can trend down to somewhere slightly above 20% before the end of the year. Yeah, but will the CBN do that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think anybody is necessarily hoping that it happens in 1 year.
Exactly.
I mean, it would be great if it does happen in 1 year, but okay, you have 2 more years in this administration.
Let's just see a trend.
Yeah, let's see, exactly, let's see a trend.
Let's see a positive trend.
See, every quarter that it is
exactly, it's dropping significantly.
Reducing. And so, from what you've seen, I mean, they've put out 2025 budget proposal. There's a lot of questions that have been asked about the 2025 budget.
Absolutely.
But from what you have seen with their own interest and with their own plans, how possible is it that we're actually going to see a reduction without the rebasing that they're speaking of as well?
Sadly, it's extremely unlikely. What I've been saying as far as my outlook and projections for the year is that it probably won't get worse. I don't think we'll see inflation hitting 40%. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't see that. I think that with all of the fundamentals that are driving inflation have settled into their, if you like, equilibrium. Where we are now is probably where we're likely to be in terms of just the balance of the economy. Now, if government can act, then we can begin to see an improvement. So at least the good news for me is that I don't think it will get significantly worse. I don't think we're going to see a bag of rice, hitting 150,000 naira per bag, for example, for 50 kg. I don't think that will happen. I think the price of petrol has peaked, and the only way for now is down, unless something dramatic happens with exchange rates. So I think the good news is we're balanced. Now, what can the government do to bring these things down? The CBN recently released a policy initiative targeting diaspora Nigerians, the non-resident Nigeria accounts, investment accounts and current accounts. Now, if that is done properly and implemented properly, it could be a game changer. It could actually attract an additional 18 to 20 billion US dollars into the official markets. Because what's happening now is that people are remitting monies home, 20 to 25 billion dollars every year, but majority of the forex liquidity does not enter the Nigerian market. They have all sorts of platforms and shadow networks where they exchange their dollars out there and the naira find its way in. So if this works, the dollars will come into the economy and it will affect exchange rates. So Yeah.
Speaking about dollars coming to the economy, let's talk about the role that the IJGBs, I just got back, the role that they play in our inflation. Is there any role that they play? We see a surge during the festive season. 2024 officially has marked Dirty December as a thing. And by 2025, I'm expecting that there will be an even higher surge of people coming into Lagos, Nigeria to spend Christmas. How do you perceive that this will impact inflation?
I mean, look, this is a seasonal thing. I don't see any significant impact in terms of the fundamental indicators that we need to see improvements on. It will increase tourism and whatever associated economic activity that follows that, just for a very short period. So you'll see a bump up in numbers in December, and maybe the trickle effect into January, and that will be that about that. So we need something more. It's good. I think it's a good thing. I think it needs to be encouraged. I'm beginning to hear whispers, that government wants to tax that.
I saw,
I think it's also important to say that the IJGB, I don't even know if the NBS did mention, that is a reason or.
But they did say that there was an increase attributed to an increase of demand in the festive season. Now we know that a number of Nigerians living abroad came into the country.
Yeah, but it's I think it's fair, or it's important to mention that it's not necessarily because the Nigerian government did anything. Nigerians will come back home every Christmas. So it's not like we saw a government that then invested in certain level of infrastructure.
No, it's because Nigerians have created.
No, we just created a hype
fund for themselves.
Exactly. So when these parts of the conversation are mentioned, it's not kudos to the government. The people came back home and no, that's not it. And by the time these people leave, the Nigerians who are here that don't have anywhere to go will face the real inflation. Whatever figures that were a percentage that we're seeing, you would face that reality. And the government must take whatever steps is necessary to beat down that inflation.
Absolutely.
How unfair is it to the average Nigerian if the government chooses to do this rebasing thing and changes the inflation to maybe 7%? How unfair and how unrealistic would that be to the average Nigerian whose pocket goes to see the reality in the market every day?
I think what makes this particularly dangerous is that you see, to that average Nigerian, he knows the truth. The truth that he lives has not changed a bit. If anything, it's probably getting worse. And then he's hearing, no matter how educated or uneducated he might be, you hear it, either in Yoruba news or in Yoruba newspapers or Hausa news or whatever. You will hear the official numbers coming out from your government spokespeople. And so the trust deficit that I think the government is supposed to be deliberate about trying to fix, about trying to address and reduce, will just widen. And that will increase the rate of skepticism, lack of faith, cynicism. And you see, those negative emotions are unhelpful from a policy implementation standpoint, because you need the support and the goodwill of your citizens for your policies to work. We shouldn't make any bones about, we shouldn't play with the idea that how people feel about the country doesn't matter. It matters a great deal in terms of success of policy execution. Because if people don't believe you, they will sabotage you. They will not cooperate with you. So if the MBS is now saying inflation is 7%, but I went to the market last month, I bought a crate of eggs at 6,000 naira, and I've gone this month and I'm buying it at 7,500, and you're telling me that inflation is 7%, I will know you're lying. Yeah. And that becomes a problem. So everything you say, I will doubt. When you now say some good things, I will say it's a lie. And I think that government people need to understand that this is important and it's not something they should trifle with.
All right. Sheikh Shettima, thank you very much for your time and for speaking with us this morning. We, of course, will see how things turn out with the Nigerian government.
I hope it's
and with
positive.
the inflation.
Absolutely.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And now let's take you through the newspapers and share with you the major stories making headlines across Nigeria this morning. We're going to be joined by public affairs analyst Dr. Olasunwade Aziz. Good morning. Thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, sir. Thank you very much.
All right. We're going to start on the Punch newspapers this morning and see what we can find, or the leadership, whichever one. Okay, the Punch. It says right there, 34.8% inflation. Inflation rate rather triggers fears of rising prices and hardship. And we just got off a conversation on that as well. High demand for goods and services during Yuletide caused inflation, says the National Bureau of Statistics. Tinubu and governors salute fallen heroes, pledge support for widows. Also on the Punch, retired generals and others worry over fresh terror attacks in Northeast. Reps Deputy Chief Whip Ononuga dies at 59. Ogun Mapoli students differ over attack on Deputy Governor. That's one of the stories that we also took in the news earlier. And a dogs kill Nigerian woman in Italy. These are the stories. Alafin Owade, reverse appointments in 30 days. Kingmakers tell Governor Sheyi Makinde. Seems to be crisis brewing in Oyo State because of that appointment. But these are the major stories on the Punch newspapers this morning.
All right, let's move to the next paper this morning. And the next paper is the Leadership newspaper. On the front page of the Leadership, Tinubu to armed forces, your sacrifices won't be in vain. And we can see there the riders. We have Shettima, Akpabio, Abbas, others lay rest. Governor's task military on national security. Chief of Army Staff reaffirms commitment to troops' welfare. USSD codes, NCC approves 9 banks disconnection. Biden, others hail Israeli-Hamas ceasefire deal. 7 farmers killed in Niger crash. Inflation rises to 34.80% ahead of rebasing. Why I most, court sees other seizure of GHL's crude cargo over alleged First Bank debt. 67 CSOs seek end to Amnesty International's harassment. And that's all on the Leadership. Let's move to the next paper.
The next newspapers this morning we're taking as the Daily Independent. Says here, customers of 9 banks may not get alerts and orders from January 27th as NCC okays disconnection of banks from USSD platforms. Also, Tinubu asks Nigerians to shun violence, promote peace and unity, and that's on Armed Forces Remembrance Day. NNPCL remitted 10 trillion naira into Federation accounts in 2024. Citing security concerns, military bans drones in Northeast. And also festive spending pushes Nigeria's inflation to 34.80%. It's also, maybe a good question to ask if that is truly what is to blame. National Assembly rejects housing budget, orders minister to represent it rather. Israel-Hamas reach deal on Gaza ceasefire and hostage release. Tinubu okays recruitment of 5,000 personnel for NCOS. And I think these are the stories that we can take on the Daily Independent newspaper this morning. Our fire newspaper, the Daily Trust, airstrike kills 15 in, I beg you, that's a different newspaper. A Daily Trust, why I won't help Tinubu government, says Emir Sanusi, says the president lacks a credible team. Borno farmers killing, terrorists ambush soldiers and others recovering corpses. War on Gaza, Israel and Hamas seal ceasefire deal. Prison decongestion, federal government to pardon convicts, inaugurates committee. We are struggling to survive, fallen heroes, widows are saying. And military bans drone operation in Northeast. Inflation rises to 34.80% in December. Senate queries State House over 5.9 billion naira spending on vehicles. Interesting. All right, let's bring our guest in to analyze some of these stories. I think it's, I think we should start with the inflation. The NBS blames those who came into Nigeria in December to celebrate Christmas for the rising inflation to 34.80%. I'm sure that there's going to be people who might argue that that may not be the only reason, but if that's what the NBS is saying, it's fine. But does this, make you lose faith or trust in the government's projections of 15% in the 2025 budget?
Thank you very much. People coming in from diaspora to Nigeria might actually not necessarily be the only factor that actually spiral up the inflation in December. There are a lot of other factors like demand and supply imbalance. Not only that, we also have monetary policy, economic growth, increase in wages, commodity price shocks, and what have you, exchange rates. I know for the people that came in from diaspora might be a factor, but there are some other factors I just mentioned now. And government actually need to be very conscious of that. And if you recall, the president during his end of year brief with media executive, he actually talked convincingly to we Nigerians that's going to actually do some curtailment strategy that will enable us to actually tame the inflation to ensure that it's within the 2 digits that will actually not make life difficult for us. And be that as it may, if people that actually come around from other country happen to be, do they actually have plans to actually curtail it? Today, go to the market, a price of a bag of rice, 50 kg, some ranges from 180 to 120,000. It depends on the quality and where they actually source them. I'm of the opinion that between now and when the budget will properly actually become effective and operational, a lot of curtailment and containment strategy was actually been articulated to ensure that it is actually being managed to ensure that things are not really, not only that out of the exchange rate, almost about 1,600 to $1. All those things go a long way. And unfortunately, you know, we happen to be a consuming nation, not a producing nation. We are not exporting, we are importing. And the inflation goes beyond just mere rhetorics. We actually need to put some economic policy in place.
Yeah.
For instance, let's just talk about one staple food in Nigeria. There's hardly any home they don't eat rice in a day. What are they doing about rice? Some people are actually feasting fast on the crisis, on the hardship Nigeria is going through. If government actually can flood the market with price at control, rice, with a stock of rice in the marketplace at control price, lo and behold, the people that are actually feasting fast on it will have a rethink. And before you know it, an ordinary man on the street will actually have something to smile at if government is able to address such situation.
Okay, I mean, so, but you don't have faith that they can achieve 15%?
I do have hope.
Okay.
Funny enough, I believe in Nigeria as a nation, Nigeria as a project, Nigeria as a people. Nigeria has gone beyond and should go beyond geographical expression.
Yeah.
What really happened is government may be a little bit slow in some of their action, in some of their strategy, because the rate at which people are actually suffering hardship in the land call for what I call emergency action, not reaction. Project, strategy, policy that actually make life easy for an individual, an average Nigeria on the street.
Yeah. All right.
All right. Let's move to another story. Looking at the leadership newspaper on the front pages, on the front page, President Tinubu says to the armed forces, your sacrifices won't be in vain. The Chief of Army Staff has reaffirmed his commitment to troops' welfare. Insecurity has been a challenge that we faced for over a decade in this country. But then again, the quality of lives that our members of our armed forces have had to live with whilst alive, and even the ways that their family have been treated after death have come to, have been part of the conversation. If you look at the Daily Trust as well, the fallen heroes' widows say we are struggling to survive. So from your analysis, how is Nigeria faring in terms of welfare for members of our armed forces, and what are the areas we can do better? Is it enough to just bring out one day, January 15th, and we'll come, they will lay ref, and they will celebrate them and, grant them this grand platform? But in the course of the year, how would you say we're faring in terms of caring for members of our armed forces?
Thank you very much. You said it all. Our fallen hero, our hearts actually go to them, to their family, for laying their life, paying supreme price to secure you and I, to secure Nigeria, territorial integrity, and also to sustain and affirm our sovereignty. It goes beyond just mere rhetorics, as I said earlier on another topic. And I think on that base, there must be an articulated welfare scheme. It shouldn't just be an annual ritual. The president will tell us suit-bombing speeches. It goes beyond that. There must be articulated, consolidated welfare scheme for the spouses, for the children, especially their nuclear family they left behind. It might not be out of place to ensure that their children, they see them through their university education. Any of them that are actually interested in joining the force, the armed forces, they should be able to actually be given first right of refusal if they want to. If they actually allow them and at the same time sponsor them or give them or grant them scholarship to Nigerian university or especially NDA, it's not out of place. Of course, they also need to put the widows or widower on some monthly stipend, basically to enable them to make life meaningful to them. Not only that, the insurance they actually put on the soldiers while still alive, while still fighting for the territorial integrity of Nigeria, lo and behold, they should be actually be able to disburse that. Not only that, widows or widowers of our fallen heroes, needless to actually struggle before they get the entitlement of the fallen heroes. And not only that, there could also be some commission whose job basically is to actually take care of the needs and welfare of all these people who, only because their benefactor happen to be soldiers, who do what? Who fought for Nigeria and laid their life for the nation to be. Lo and behold, I think they deserve a better. And just see one of the headline there. Widows say they are struggling to survive. If they are struggling to survive, that means Nigeria is not fair to them. And of course, what are they doing about the education of their children? What are they doing about the life and living of those people that they have left behind? The current soldier, how would they be motivated? How would they be, be 100% loyal to the other side in the line of defending the nation? I do strongly hope that the president, the incumbent president, will, and of course the National Assembly, will articulate legislation. And of course the executive also come up with some strategy, with some policy, with some packages on welfare scheme that will enable the surviving family of the fallen hero to have to be proud that their benefactor incidentally happened to fight and at the same time lost their life and treated worth it. And not only that, it's not only about the fallen hero. What about the living soldiers outside there? They must be encouraged the way the fallen colleagues, partners, they have been treated.
Yeah. All right. I mean, I think everybody would agree with that. The Nigerian military, Nigerian armed forces generally, deserve a lot more support from the Nigerian government. How familiar are you with what's going on in Oyo State? The story, it says here, Alafin Owade says, reverse appointment in 30 days, Kingmakers tell Governor Seyi Makinde.
Incidentally, I'm from Oyo State, the capital of the state, and I'm also a chief. So when it comes to all this, it's not something that's very strange to me. You will agree with me, not only Oyo, what of Kano?
Yeah.
What of Ogbomoso? I think it's high time a political class, they shouldn't actually put politics into everything in our life. There's what we call culture, and inside that culture you have tradition. And inside that tradition you have value. And when we say culture simply means the way we do things here. Lo and behold, it is unlawful, it is illegal, it is uncultured, it is untraditional for any Kabiyesi to be installed in the cozy office of a governor. They have structures. And as far back as 1967, when Oyo Traditional Act was enacted, everything is actually stipulated in there. And there are checks and balances. Governor is not to install. Governor is to ratify what Oyomesi. Oyomesi are the kingmakers, right? And of course, you could see there's difference between having moral authority, legal authority. Today, the current Alafin may actually suffer from what I call moral authority. And he may end up suffer again what I call traditional rulers aloofness. He is not Kabiyesi of the governor. He is not Kabiyesi of Ibadan land. He is Alafin of Oyo. And Oyo in Yoruba tradition, lo and behold, they are forced to be reckoned with. You could see the aura around the late Oba, Alafin, Adeyemi. You could see the man was an authority. The man was, an epitome of culture of Oyo land. So, what I just want to say in essence is that politicians should leave politics within the political arena and they leave tradition to what have you. They actually need to, it is the Oyomesi through Bashorun They are supposed to declare, and they have done that. It is alien in the 1967 Traditional Act to Alaafin that they should consult Ifa. If they consult Ifa, maybe just to weed away too many candidates. But the responsibility, the duty, it is the obligation of the Oyomesi, the kingmaker, to scrutinize who and who are entitled to be the next Alaafin. This has actually not really happened. It's just a splinter, a faction of Oyomesi that actually work in tandem with Ministry of Local Government in Oyo State to, and they recommended to Kabiyesi. Lo and behold, Oba is for everybody. Acceptance must not be in controversy. If they actually want that particular person to serve as spiritual, as traditional leader of the town.
So what do you think Governor Shea Makinde is doing?
To me, I think he has actually jumped over certain things. He should have actually allowed Oyomesi, and which they have actually done. You could recollect from the, from the report we have. They said when the man died about 2-3 years ago, and what did they do? In line with the tradition, they got all the candidates and they screened them. And of course, they announced, first of all, they announced the death to the governor. Governor is actually to assent to the recommendation of Oyomesi. Today is approbating, is reprobating. You can't be a judge. You can't be prosecutor. If you have issue with Oyomesi, there are ways and manners legally they could actually be handled without necessarily scuttling the traditional way they do things.
So how do you think that this will be resolved? Because now they've asked that the appointment be reversed. And
actually, I would have actually been a little bit uninterested to discuss the matter. Why? It's actually a pending matter before a court of competence in Oyo. Obviously, as Oyomesi actually said, and even the prince, the 19 princes in Oyo, that all he needs to do, he does not need to actually take them to social media or public opinion judgment. That since the matter is before the law court, should have allowed the court to dispense with the matter and at the same time proclaim who is supposed to be there legally. And at the end of the day, give him instrument of office, staff of office, certificate of office, and what have you. But that process has actually been truncated. So at the end of the day, the court may end up being the final. We are all living witnesses. There are some people, there are some Kabiyesi that were deposed 20 years, 30 years after their enthronement because due process, due diligence actually not being put in place in their selection, in their appointment, which make it contentious for people not to accept them. And for court to actually also dethrone them.
All right. I want us to, let's now move to Emir Sanusi, who says, the Daily Trust newspaper, it says, why I won't help Tinubu government. Emir Sanusi says, he says the president lacks credible team, and he's declared his unwillingness to provide helpful insights to or solutions to Nigeria's economic challenges. He was saying this, of course, at the 21st anniversary of Faweyimism in Lagos on Wednesday. Sanusi had criticized President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's approach to a number of economic policies and his inability to present a credible explanation to the public. But let's get your thoughts on that.
Well, I think I look at it comme ci, comme ça. Let me use that French word. Today, Sanusi is Emir of Kano, a highly respected first-class Emir in the northern part of the country. There are some roles attached and attributed or attributable to certain roles. I know for sure as Emir, I like opposition talking to the power, correcting them on certain things. But there are certain things, there are certain class of people. They need to choose the right medium to actually communicate. I know for sure the same Tinubu that the Emir is actually talking about today rescued him at a point when he was actually during Jonathan. I actually expected him to seek in audience the president and actually tell him what he's telling the public. Am I communicating? It's good that some people are there to talk to power. Not all of us will be patronizing the power. But as Emir, one would have actually expected him to choose a more dignified route, means, channel to actually talk to the power. Be that as it may, now, assuming he was able to actually have in audience the president, some of these issues will have actually been discussed. But if you are to force Sanusi, not in the area of cerebral prowess, not in the area of analytical, right?
Yeah.
Account of what really happened. We knew for sure that being a past group MD of a bank, being a past Central Bank of Nigeria, is in a position to actually look at some indices. Are they adding up? Economic indices, are they adding up? Are we actually get what we're supposed to get? So be that as it may, the government might actually still look at what he says and try to address them. But to me, I would have actually loved him to, or maybe he write a letter, not letter to my fellow countrymen, but personal letter to the president. After all those avenues must have been exhausted, and there is actually no response to his concern, to his, what he feels should be addressed, he can actually do that. But nevertheless, no idea is useless. I would have actually suggested that the presidency diagnose, dissect the point he has made, the area he has called, his concern that has been expressed, for them to actually address them and see what happened. And I know for sure at the time, President actually withered away some ministers that he feels they are not. But again, I think the government should go, the president himself should go beyond mere rhetorics. There must be key performance indicators for all the ministers so that he can inspect what he expects from individual ministers, individual governments, functionary, so that at the end of the day, within 1 year, you are not doing, just like in the private sector, there's what we call OKR, Organizational Key Result Area. There's what we call Key Business Indicator, and there's also what we call Key Performance Indicator. All these parameters, all these instruments should actually be in place to control, to affirm the performance, to calibrate the performance of each and every government functionary.
Yeah, I mean, that would be for a government that truly wants to constantly rate itself and see that it, is delivering on KPIs. Do you get the, feeling that this government actually has key performance indicators with which it's working across all MDAs? That the government says that by 2026, for example, or the end of 2025, this is where we want to see healthcare. This is where we want to see power generation. This is where we want to see infrastructure. This is where we want to see, the Human Development Index generally, with Nigerians. Do you get that sense that this government has those plans? Because the same government that, we're talking about rebasing the economy. Not very long ago, the NBS also changed its metric with which it analyzed the unemployment levels and brought Nigeria's unemployment, much lower than many people would argue it really is. So do you believe that it has those KPIs and it's working with those KPIs?
Okay, since I'm not part of the internal government, and I'm also part of the inner mechanism of performance calibration, I'm actually not be able to say that.
Yeah.
But let's just pick one. There are two things that are so critical in any economy: power. And power in this can have further calibrated into two.
Yeah.
Power in terms of energy you and I are using, and power in terms of petroleum. You see how contentious petroleum issue is all about. What of energy? Our national grid continue to collapse.
Yeah.
Am I communicating? Lo and behold, who is our power minister today? An accountant. Sometimes you need to put the rank pearl inside the rank hole, then you'll be able to get the expected result. Now, they are talking about band A, band B, band C. Lo and behold, all over the world, name it, America, Canada, United Kingdom, Malaysia, Singapore, or wherever, everybody pay for what they consume. Though government do some subsidy on it.
Yeah.
If you are to look at power in terms of electricity, it's a failure. It's a failure today. And if government is able to actually address that, along with petroleum issue, Nigeria will be an El Dorado. go out there, you will see a lot of graduates pushing Marwa around. Why? Because the power they need to really make things happen in their life.
We need to go, right? The government has 4 years, except it is then re-elected. But logically, you have only 4 years to deliver somewhat.
Yep.
What do you believe that the current administration will be able to say it delivered within the next 4 years? We're 2 years into the administration, now has 2 years to go. Will it get to the maybe end of 2026 and say to itself, you know, we're proud that we delivered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things for Nigerians? Is there things that you can say that they can brag with?
Okay. The way things are from the failure we get from the government inner mechanism, you know, working system.
Yeah.
We have the opinion that they're actually sowing some seed, which by third year we begin to see the effect of it. See the example of petroleum.
Yeah.
There's now one of the media charts content or messages that President passed is it will allow demand and supply mechanism to take care of that. You know, by the time Dangote comes in, it was a different trajectory. Am I communicating?
Yeah.
By the time Port Harcourt's refinery become activated, it become a different story entirely. By the time we're also thinking about Warri refinery, it's actually going to become operational. And by the time Kaduna refinery also come to be, lo and behold, I think it might be a success story. What really happened is the problem we are encountering today was actually not something happened today or yesterday. They are accumulation. And we don't actually expect these people as magicians or miracle performers to let it happen over time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think what the presidency or what the government needs to do for each of the steps they are taking, they owe us explanation. Am I communicating rather? And not only that, just in that year-end media chart by the president, he articulated a lot of things. You could see that there will be hope at the end of the tunnel. I strongly believe, all things being equal, if we put the right person at the right time, and presidency should have people whose job basically is to analyze each and every ministry, from agri to Ministry of Power, to works and housing, and what have you.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you know why? What get measured, get done.
Yeah.
What get tracked, get done. There must be a calibration system that will enable each and everybody to be on their toe. See aviation ministry, they are getting a lot of result in there.
We need to go. Mr. Aziz, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure having me.
Thank you for joining us.
Speaking with you as well.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Now, you've heard what our guest has had to say. We've also shared our thoughts, but let's now bring to you what Nigerians are saying. Comes up right next.
Today we're holding a candle for the young woman who was unfortunately murdered. Her name is Salome Adaidu. She was brutally murdered by Timileyin Ajayi, a young man who claims that, you know, she's his girlfriend, or she was his girlfriend. Now, this young man also had several claims, claimed to be a music artist, claimed to be many things, claimed to, you know, have caught her cheating, and as a result of that, killed her. How exactly does cheating measure up to being killed? But that's another conversation for another day. Now, this, if you look at the picture on the screen, this is a picture by Amnesty International that has showed the different women who have been killed by different men, some in the past year. We recall the story of Christiana Idowu, who was killed by Ayomide, who confessed. Ayomide Adeleye confessed to killing her. And then there's the story of Oster, Nigerian influencer Augusta Osedion, who was killed by her boyfriend, Benjamin Best, also known as Killer Boy. Today, we do not know where Killer Boy is, if it's been apprehended, but the reports have it that he's been living La Vida Loca in Qatar. Now, these are just two of the hundreds of women who have been gruesomely murdered. Over 133 Nigerian women, including teenagers, were victims of suspected gender-related violence between January 1st, 2024 and December 31st, 2024, according to the 2024 DOHS Cares Foundation Femicide reports. Today, we're going to be looking at what Nigerians are saying about this, but just to highlight that the questions that are being raised are, who exactly is this Timileyin Ajayi? What is his relationship with this girl? He claims that she was his girlfriend. Family and friends who know her up close have denied knowing him as a human being first, or even knowing him as her boyfriend. There have been allegations about him maybe being linked with an organ harvesting syndicate, but we do not have enough evidence to prove that yet. In the clips that have gone viral on social media, he's acted like there's a bit of insanity. There are people who would analyze that he's starting to act like there's insanity there, but they think that it's a cover that he's using. So the question is Salome going to be just another hashtag that will trend for the next few days? People will be angry. Nigerians will be enraged and demand justice for Salome Adaidu. And at the end of the day, the matter will just fade away like a number of the others have. Or will Salome Adaidu truly get justice? What really would justice mean for Salome Adaidu's family? What would that look like? She can never come back to life. We can't hear her side of the story. The only side of the story we're hearing in this case is Timileyin Ajayi. We don't know her side of the story, and unfortunately, we will never have her own side of the story. The moral of this is that when cases like this happen, there's only one side of the story, the side of the perpetrator of these abuse. And Nigerians are calling for justice collectively with one voice, and we're going to share what their tweets are saying in this regard. And our first tweet this morning is from Yemisi Kola. Okay, Amnesty International, of course, I said there are no two sides to these brutal atrocities targeting women. And they've mentioned that in almost all recent cases of femicide in Nigeria, the authorities do not rigorously pursue all lines of inquiry, and their failure further endangers women's human rights to life and physical safety. Let's go on to the next tweet from Yemisi Kola, who says, Timileyin Ajayi's case is just tragic. Whenever I come across stories like this, I can't help but think about the victims' final moments, the realization of what's about to happen, and the sheer terror they must have felt. Imagine how many of these tragedies never make it online. Our next tweet is from Dr. Kelechi Ugonna, who says, the way that fellow Timileyin Ajayi killed and butchered that young girl, he intended to sell her body parts. There is a dark, on-the-ground human parts market in Nigeria. He'll be released very soon, or he will mysteriously die before he sinks. And our next tweet is from Ramona, who says, why do I feel this guy is lying? Why do I feel someone has told this guy what to say before now? This guy did not do the killing because she was cheating. He did it for a different purpose. And why is the guy still talking with full confidence? The next one is from Ugbede, who seems to know her personally. She says, tears watching a man say he has no remorse for killing her. What will you say to the sick widow who lost her husband 8 months ago? That you have no remorse for taking her daughter's life? If I cry for justice, will Ele get justice? And in the next tweet, still by Ugbede, sharing that she knows her. I mean, there was an earlier tweet that established that, and hopefully we can take that. She says, and she was never his girlfriend. Ele was kidnapped. His games and lie is to draw the public's remorse, and I wish this pain on anybody who feels any remorse for him. There had been an earlier tweet where she had established the fact that she knew her from, way back. In that earlier tweet, she had said, anytime I see things like this happen, I get so angry and pained. But today it has come close to home. The last time I saw Ele was in 2018. She was most gracious and gentle lady you'll ever meet. We slept on the same bed. She bade me goodbye when I was leaving. And then she continues. It was a really long thread where she explained the unfortunate reality of what has become. Now let's move on to other tweets. We have Novi Everest, let's take from, Novi Everest said, clocked, he does not know her. There's a bigger fish in there. He has colleagues he's working with. He is a parts dealer. Spotlight Abby goes on to tweet and react about this, saying, I'm convinced that this animal was never friends with Salome Adaidu, the young woman he killed. He could be part of an organ harvesting gang. Regrettably, I don't trust the Nigerian criminal justice system one bit. How is he even sitting without handcuffs? Omale Angela writes, Tochi does talk about it as well. Tochi says, the heart of man is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? Quoting Jeremiah 17:9. And Omale Angela chooses to honor Salome's memory by saying, I would like to point out a few things. Despite the false information circulating online, Salome Eliojo Adaidu was a 24-year-old Igala girl from Kogi State. She graduated from Kogi State University and attended Living Faith Church in Nyanya. She continues to say she was a 7-core member of NYC before her life was taken. She had a close relationship with her elder sister and they lost their father 8 months ago. Contrary to online rumors, Salome did not have a romantic relationship with her murderer. He lied. And our final tweet this morning says, is it not on the same app that Osta's killer is roaming free? What about the boy that killed his sister, abducted a girl, killed her, and posed her body to get a ransom from her family? It's only on Twitter that women get justice in court. We're hoping that the Nigerian police proves us wrong, proves Nigerians wrong in this case, and ensure that Salome Adaidu gets justice. She does not deserve, first, to have died, secondly, to have died in the most gruesome and heartbreaking way. And, it just again reveals the fact that this is a problem that must be nipped in the bud until we can start to set, there are laws, but until we can start to see stronger implications, we can start to see that people who commit these crimes not only face the wrath of the law, it's not just on social media, but in real life they get to face the wrath of law. Maybe, and then maybe shall we start to see that there is a great reduction in the way that women are being killed, or in other words, femicide. And that's all that we have this morning on what Nigerians are saying. But we join the rest of the country to say our hearts, our thoughts, and our prayers are with the family of Salome Adaidu. May she rest in peace, and may her killer face the justice that he deserves.
All right. Really heartbreaking. I'm not even sure where my emotions are with that, particular discussion or with this particular case. Olive, for me, I believe that there's a ton of questions that remain unanswered. And it's something that I will speak on, much later. And the reason that a ton of questions remain unanswered is because of the failure, really, of the criminal justice system in other cases. Some of the cases that you already mentioned. That we've seen, including the ones that didn't even make it into public discourse. Those questions, if you look at the comments from many people there, you saw people saying, organ trades. Some people said, a trade of body parts. Online, you could also see many people talk about ritual killings. It's just complete chaos, But again, it just points to the fact that there are too many questions that are left unanswered from previous cases that the Nigerian government, needs to do better with. It's heartbreaking as well, when you see these kind of things, and people already say, well, they don't expect that they will get justice. I'm not even sure what justice really would mean.
That's the question that I always ask. Like, what is justice? Because this girl will never come back to life.
Yeah, justice will maybe be, for some people, it's the death sentence
Capital
for
punishment
Akila,
for him.
Whatever it is, but he still needs to go through the criminal justice system for as long as it would take. Nobody knows how long that would be. But if you look at the Osters case, like you mentioned, you look at the lady who was killed in the bus, there's too many of them, really. The one who went to see her best friend back then or so, the one who went for a job interview, there's too many again, of them. And it just hurts, that this is truly where we are. And that we maybe are not even asking the right questions when we see cases like this. I don't know if I agree with the femicide term that Amnesty International is using, but again, it is still also because too many unanswered questions, surrounding these things. But
well, I would say that the reason they're using that is so if we Google the meaning, for example, of femicide, which I'm going to do now, it's basically the killing of women. Right? You're
it's
killing
not just
women
killing of
because
women, it is killing of
so
women.
it's a term for murdering of women, often because of their
agenda. And that's why I said the unanswered questions make it difficult for us to say, okay, it's because of the agenda. If killing of women, does happen. I mean, most of these cases you find that they're women, you know, which everybody will agree with. And something that I would also talk about later, why is it mostly women? Even if you say, okay, it is ritual, why is it mostly women? If you say it is organ harvesting, why is it mostly women?
Because in some cases...
If it is sale of body part, why is it mostly women? So because there's no actual clarity, it's troubling.
So that's why you've answered the question. At the end of the day, that's why they have called it femicide, because it's you have people that you can kill, but why is it mostly women that you're attacking? You have very rare cases where you hear that, oh, they harvested this man's organ, or they did this, or they tried to sexually assault the man, and when he refused, they killed him. It's usually women.
It's crazy. It's wild. Again, too many unanswered questions, but it just really, really hurts. Anyway, moving away from, thank you very much for what Nigerians are saying. It's time for us to wrap up the program this morning. Thank you very much for staying with us. We apologize for ending on such a tragic story, but these are conversations that we must have if we hope to stop, you know, this. And, you know, I hope that we take the steps as a country and as a community to ensure that we do not have more of, you know, similar cases. We'll be back here again tomorrow morning on Breakfast Central again. I am Osaogie Ogbawa.
And I am Olive Emodi, and we'll see you tomorrow.